The 100 Mega Shock. And button mashing? You bet. See all three Basement Brothers get their asses handed to them on a platter. And a real wrestler stops by to lend his insight. All this and more coming up on this episode of Neo Geo Generation. Welcome back to Neo Geo Generation. I'm Neo-Alec. This time we're looking at NGH-043, 3 Count Bout, aka Fire Suplex in Japan, 1993 from SNK. The meg count of this one weighs in at 106 megs, making this one the first game we've covered with SNK's 100 Mega Shock branding. The 100 Mega Shock logo would pop up at boot after the Neo Geo logo on about 15 Neo Geo games. This was SNK's campaign to promote the larger size of their games as they began to exceed 100 megabits. Beginning with Art of Fighting in 1992, it can be found on games released as late as 1995. You should hopefully be able to notice a leap in graphic fidelity here over many of the games we've covered before in this series. Bigger, badder, better. Going back in time slightly further, an early version of the game was said to be only 82 megs. Here are some preview images from a 1993 Game Fan magazine showing an alternate, completely different design for the character Roy Wilson. Who knows why they changed this? At some point the game's meg count was increased. Here's a fall 1992 Neo Geo catalog advertising a wrestling game as part of their 100 Mega Shock series. Well, they made a typo saying the game was over 10 milligrams, but obviously they meant 100 megs. 3 Count Bout is the only true wrestling game released for the Neo Geo. That is, if you don't count King of the Monsters, which incorporated wrestling mechanics such as pinning your opponents and restricting the match to the confines of a ring. So depending on whether or not you count that one, 3 Count Bout could be your only wrestling fix on the Neo. Full disclosure, I'm not a fan of wrestling games myself, but all the same, let's find out if this one holds up or if it's a dud. 3 Count Bout was produced by SNK founder Eikichi Kawasaki. Many of the artists and programmers who lent their skill on this game also worked on a broad range of SNK fighting games, as well as some earlier Neo Geo titles. At 2 minutes and 38 seconds, this game has one of the longest attract modes of any Neo Geo game. It shows a long how to play sequence, followed by an intro featuring 5 character profiles. If this game is put on rotation in a multi-slot MVS arcade cabinet, expect it to monopolize the screen time while the machine is in attract mode before it cycles to the next game. Most Neo Geo games show a quick how to play sequence after starting the game, but this one shows it during attract mode, probably because it's 1 minute and 20 seconds long. Maybe they just really wanted people to know how to play the game, or at least think they know how to play it. The information provided here alone will not be enough for you to be successful at this game. Press A to punch, and B to kick. The C button allows you to jump. You can dash by pressing A and B together, not to be confused with the charge move, which can be performed by tapping twice in the same direction. Don't sleep on the dash, it's really useful for evading your opponent, and part of playing the game on a high level. When your opponent is down, you can press C to damage him with a body drop. You will enter a grapple with your opponent when you get close enough in, and then let the button mashing begin. A gauge will appear, and if you win this grapple against your opponent, you can use what are called wrestling techniques to damage your opponent. More on the grappling mechanics later. Press D to pin your opponent, or take a fall.
Hey, Long, it's time to throw the fight!
Select from a cast of 10 colorful characters. Well, almost. Go check Big Bomb and Big Bombarder are just head swaps of each other. I think they meant Bombarder. So are Blues Hablin and Blubberman. Visually, they're almost the same, but of course they do have some gameplay differences. Many of the game's characters seem to be inspired by real-life wrestlers, but are legally distinct here. Red Dragon seems to be based on the real-life Great Muta. Master Barnes is Road Warrior Animal. It's possible that the Gandhara was somewhat based on Tatanka, but the Gandhara is billed from India, and Tatanka is a Native American. Is it possible they got their Indians mixed up? Gochak Big Bomb and Big Bomberder look like they were based on Big Van Vader.
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't get your name.
Roy Wilson and Leo Bradley both seem to take inspiration from Bruiser Brody. Terry Rogers is a composite American good guy character based on Terry Funk and others. Well, did I miss any? Please leave a comment. So let's get started. You have a choice of 3 gameplay options. A standard 1-player match against the computer, which takes you through the SWF SNK Wrestle Festival, a total of 10 rounds, ending in the World Heavyweight title match against Master Barnes. You can also choose a standard player versus player match against a friend. But to make things more interesting, in the final mode, Tag Match, you and another player can play co-op together through a game against 2 computer-controlled characters. There is unfortunately no option for a 1-player tag match here, which would have been a nice idea, since for the most part, there's only 1 wrestler from each team active at a given time.
Oh boy, Ren, now it's your turn to play.
You'll spend a lot of the game here in the ring, an impressively rendered venue with a very detailed animated crowd. Not a lot of repeat crowd characters here. But round 2 against Leo Bradley takes it to the streets in a street wrestling match.
Next time we see you guys, it'll be in the street!
The RAM conversion van here is very 90s. You've got weapons to pick up, including the crates, barbed wire bat, and a taser. This part of the game is simply insane fun, despite the core gameplay being the same and the sometimes frustrating challenge level. The computer opponents going off-screen to pick up a hapless spectator to use as a weapon has to be my favorite detail in the entire game. I mean, that's just amazing. It's somewhat of a rare occurrence, but so offbeat hilarious when it happens. You can tell the developers really had a good time adding details in this one. You don't have to pin your opponents here, simply drain their life bar and knock them down for a knockout. In tag team mode, both players of one team must be knocked out. There are 2 of these street wrestling matches in the game, and they do, albeit superficially, mix things up and add variety. The 4th round against Gochak Big Bomb and 8th round against Big Bomberder take place on the electricity stage. And yes, you're right, the thing that makes this electric match so badass is that it's like the death matches in World Heroes. They also give you more of those bats to play with here.
One man will actually be unmasked and killed in the ring.
I hope they kill that Iron Yuppie.
They misspelled the in-game abbreviation of Blubberman's name with an R and an A instead of an L and a U, because of course they did. His name was spelled right in the early preview build of the game for some reason, but wrong in the final game. The really annoying thing about the fight against Blubberman is that the computer rarely lets you get close enough to grab him, making him difficult to pin twice, often running out the clock before you have a chance to win. And if you don't defeat your opponent within the time limit in this game, the champion wins, meaning the computer always wins and you're forced to continue. Except in the street wrestling scenes, where it's possible to win a tie. The difficulty of the game is higher when the time limit is set shorter. So, in preparation for this video, my brother Mr. Jakes and I were excited to capture some footage of the 2-player tag team mode. We both read the strategies and watched the videos online for tips. More on that in a moment. And here's how that went. Then Mr. Jakes and my other brother Stu Rat apparently tried again while I wasn't around. Here's how that went. Heroes in a half shell. Heroes in a half shell. Heroes in a half. Oh. So even though we tried to learn the game, we all walked away very disappointed and frustrated. Alright, fine. Let's try this again. So how does one go about getting better at this difficult game? I'll do my best to summarize. Credit to Blackanese Ninja and Lord BBH for providing the winning strategies here. The number one takeaway is that you must chip away at or weaken your opponent prior to getting into a grappling match if you want it to go in your favor. A problem with the game is that this is probably not obvious to most players without help. Even then, winning the grapples requires some serious button mashing. Try trembling your hand while barely depressing the buttons to lessen the travel distance needed to register button presses. If you win a grapple, press up or down and A for a quick combo. If you can get the gauge to be at least 2/3 in your favor, you can instead press B to do a wrestling technique. Beware, you want to make sure the gauge is filled enough, or you run the risk of these bigger techniques failing. The button mashing is also necessary for consistently executing many of the game's special moves, such as Terry's rapid palms. The quick evade, performed by holding back or forward and pressing A and B together, is key to avoiding damage. You can go out of the ring during ring matches. You can also climb up on the turnbuckle by holding up near it. It's a good idea to use your flying attack from up here. So next, taking all of this to heart, I played the one-player game as Terry Rogers. The advantage of Terry's rapid palms, executed by rapidly tapping A, is that it continuously damages opponents, as opposed to Blubberman and Blues Hablam's Bloody Slash, performed the same way, which immediately knocks your opponent down, giving you much less opportunity to do damage and decrease their life gauge. And oh yeah, you don't have to play this game with a rapid-fire controller. I've found that I am able to play it with just a standard joystick, but I'm old and it just kills my hand. So this isn't Neo-Alec suggesting you cheat and use a turbo controller for this game, but you just might enjoy the game more if you use one. The final match against Master Barnes is not difficult at all if you get him against the side of the ring and keep hitting him with Terry's B kick. That kick has a good reach and priority against his moves. The staff rule provides a review of the cast of the game. The whole group finally runs your character over in the end, before all piling on. As SNK credit sequences go, it's a decently lively one that ends the game on a light-hearted note. Of course, arcade games should be difficult because they're designed to get your money, but there's a tricky balance between maintaining a challenge level that makes a game fun and keeps you coming back for more, compared with a game that's simply too unforgiving or cryptic, causing players to walk away. I would argue that the obtuse mechanics and cheap, demanding AI in SNK games like 3 Count Bout and also King of the Monsters 2, as an example we've recently covered, land too far over on the wrong side of that equation. Although the game's difficult AI forces you to learn and exploit the character's patterns when fighting against the computer, 3 Count Bout somewhat redeems itself if you can find another human to play against. In competitive mode, some of the game's complexity is revealed, playing more like a standard one-on-one fighter. It's a wrestling game that plays more mechanically like a fighting game than a proper wrestling sim, when enjoyed with
Hey, wait a minute, Alec. I'm hurt. Aren't you forgetting something? How could you do a video on the Neo Geo's only wrestling game without including me, an actual professional wrestler?
Oh hey there, Yahel. What do you mean? These YouTube skits are so stupid, aren't they? Look, you're actually in the video right now. Your name is even in the video title.
Well, I guess you're right. In that case, thanks for having me. When 3 Count Bout was released in 1993, my friends and I were playing the likes of WWF Super WrestleMania and WWF Royal Rumble. None of us had a Neo Geo, but to be honest, I don't think we would have played 3 Count Bout very often, even if we did have access to it. It's notoriously difficult and not much of a wrestling game. At least, not exactly. Now, I'm not a huge fan of modern wrestling games, but they at least try to simulate the mechanics of going from move to move in a match. In a real wrestling match, you don't, as a wrestler, normally go straight from a lockup to a move like a suplex. There's usually something before the suplex to set it up, like a kick to the gut. With 3 Count Bout, you'll see wrestlers going from a lockup straight to a pile driver. A professional wrestling simulation 3-count bout is not. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I've always enjoyed Capcom's Saturday Night Slam Masters, which kind of has a similar style. It's just that unlike 3-count bout, Slam Masters feels, beatable. But 3-count bout does have a few things for wrestling purists to enjoy, particularly the Japanese wrestling influences throughout the game. The rings use a single vertical pad in the corners as opposed to 3 turnbuckle pads used in American professional wrestling rings. Some of the throws and moves in the game, like the bow and arrow, were rarely used in American wrestling companies at the time, but it would fit right in 90s New Japan or All Japan Pro Wrestling. There's a match where the ropes are electrified that I think is probably a nod to FMW, which was a hardcore Japanese wrestling promotion that was known for having matches with barbed wire ropes, exploding corners, and the occasional electrified barricade or rope. The entrances and overall presentations of the arenas also nailed the look and feel of a Japanese wrestling promotion. Surprisingly, there aren't many familiar faces for wrestling fans in the game. Red Dragon, though, is clearly based on the Great Muta, as his entrance gear, face paint, several moves, and even the mist that he throws are all lifted from Muta. Master Barnes' appearance is taken straight from the Road Warriors, and that's kind of it. I suppose that Terry Rogers' tights might be inspired by Terry Funk, and maybe Blubberman is loosely based on Abdullah the Butcher, who would bring a fork to the ring instead of a knife like Blubberman, but I feel like those and other comparisons to real-life wrestlers I've seen online for the rest of the characters are really reaching. And unfortunately, that's most of the wrestling meat on the bone for wrestling fans. To me, 3-count bout kind of feels like a beat-em-up that was turned into a fighting game that was then turned into a wrestling game. It sort of combines all those genres, and the end result is something that just doesn't feel like much of a wrestling game to me.
Wow, thanks for stopping by, Yahel. I never would have known all this without your insight. The fantastic presentation in 3-count bout isn't limited to the graphics. The music was composed by Masahiko Hataya, aka Papaya, who is probably familiar to regular viewers by now, as well as an unknown composer, Gojigen Nanaju Pai. The game's hard-rocking score really has what I'd call that classic Neo Geo sound. Complete with announcer voices provided by Michael Beard, so at least the audio in 3-count bout will make SNK fans feel right at home like a warm blanket.
In the booth, the challenger, 284 pounds, Terry Rogers.
Dare I say, you might even consider 3-count bout's soundtrack somewhat of a forgotten gem compared with better remembered SNK titles. The soundtrack is for the most part all the same rock style SNK was known for in the 90s, so there's not much variety, but what is here is good. The Neo Geo CD version of 3-count bout has an initial load time of 26 seconds at boot on a single-speed system, and 17 seconds on a CDZ. This might be one of the first CD games that loads to this startup menu that allows you to decide what you want to do first. If you choose to watch the game's intro by selecting Demo here, it will show a short sequence featuring one character's profile, rather than the usual 5 profiles from the cartridge version. Due to memory limitations, the Neo Geo CD system isn't able to have that many characters loaded at the same time. If you choose to view the How to Play sequence, which is the same as in the cartridge, it just goes back to this screen at the end, rather than smoothly transitioning to the title, like in the cartridge version.
1, 2, 3. 3-count bout.
Choose to start the game, and immediately we get the AES options screen and mode select, followed by a 6-second load screen on single-speed systems. After selecting your character, there's a 24-second load screen before the match intro. After both contenders make their entrance, it again quickly loads for another 4 seconds before the match finally starts. The audio samples for the match are the only thing being loaded on this last screen. Expect a similar but shorter ritual again between each match. A load of about 9 seconds, followed by a quick 4-second load after the match intro. Yeah, it's pretty bad. This is probably the first game we've covered on Neo Geo Generation where the load times are excessive. Not because the load screens are especially long, but due to the sheer amount of them. If you do play the CD version, just know going in that you'll have a lot of load screens to wait through. None of the loads are ridiculously long, but there are enough of them to get somewhat annoying. Do I recommend the Neo Geo CD version of 3 Count Bout? Not really. It's exactly the same game as the cartridge, except for the waiting, and you don't even get an arranged soundtrack for your trouble. SNK did end up releasing another game in the wrestling genre, Big Bang Pro Wrestling for the Neo Geo Pocket Color, but this one was only published by SNK and actually developed by S-Neo Company, who would go on to make the Fire Pro Wrestling games from the early 2000s. Unlike 3 Count Bout, Big Bang Pro Wrestling and the Fire Pro Wrestling games are generally held in high regard by fans. You may not be surprised to learn that 3 Count Bout had a bit of a lasting legacy. A few of the characters from 3 Count Bout have appeared as cameos in other SNK games. Terry Rogers and Master Barnes both appear in the Hyper Galaxy Ring stage in the King of Fighters 15. The Red Dragon is also mentioned in Kenso's pre-fight dialogue with Raiden in KOF 13. He can also be seen on a poster in the game SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy. Oh, and Big Bomberter is mentioned in Raiden's official story for KOF 12, found on SNK's official website. 3 Count Bout is generally a like it or hate it game. And I say like it or hate it because even its defenders usually don't seem to love it. Frankly, the game has so much potential, but my brothers and I all walked away frustrated and feeling like we had our time wasted. Your enjoyment of the game will depend a lot on your patience, willingness to learn, and taste for the theme and graphics. At least the game looks and sounds good. I did end up enjoying it more when I went back and put some more work in. I still recommend giving 3 Count Bout a try for its nice presentation, and simply because there's no other game quite like it.
I like you and him! He likes me! And I like him! He is nice!
Thank you for watching another episode of Neo Geo Generation. I want to give a huge thank you to Yahel from Wrestling with Gaming for appearing and lending his expertise in this episode. Please go check out his channel for some of the best gaming documentaries out there. Next time on the series, we'll be looking at NGH-044, Art of Fighting. This classic SNK fighter holds a lot of nostalgia for me, and I'm excited to bring you this one, so please join me next time. Until then, go play some Neo Geo. This is Neo-Alec signing off.